This is the Up-Level Dairy Podcast for dairy farm owners, managers, and advisors who are committed to profitability, sustainability, and excellence. My name is Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to bring you the conversations that will up-level your skill set and your mindset so you can be a top performer in the dairy business. Today, we are talking about a 1,500 cow dairy that was on the verge of selling out, but not on their own terms. The farm had not made money in 3 years. Their banker told them that their loan was not going to be up for renewal, and their suggested action plan was the auction block. And here, a good dairy farmer was having a hard time hanging on to hope that things would ever get better, not just for his farm, but for his life. And so 5 years ago, the future was not looking good for this dairy or this dairyman. But fast forward to now, that same dairy farm is still in business. In fact, they are still with that same lender, and they have been making money. And even when $13 milk hit last summer, they were confident in their viability. So what took them from the brink of bankruptcy to being profitable, being able to not just pay their bills, but even in some cases prepay their bills? Well, it was a phone call to Pauly with Complete Management Consulting. Pauly is joining us once again on the Up-Level Dairy Podcast to share his expertise in helping dairies take charge of their finances, up their operational efficiencies, and organize labor so they can be competitive, profitable, long-term businesses. So how did Pauly turn around this 1,500 cow dairy? Well, you are about to find out, including the 3 key areas of management where Pauly helped them increase income and reduce expenses quickly, and the 4-part financial package that helped them move from the lender's non-renewal list to a solid long-term banker relationship today. Pauly recalls that first phone call.
So the first thing that person said to me when he called, he asked me, he's like, is there a way you can help us, or can you rescue our farm? Their lender and them were not getting along very well. Reason being is they had not been making any money for the past 3 years. The lender had said they were not going to borrow them any more money, and the owner was very upset because he thought he was doing everything fine. He just thought he had to ride the market out. They had been told to put the farm up for sale or, have an auction, all those things that nobody wants to hear. They don't want to ever be told they're forced to sell. They want to go out on their own terms. So this particular farm was being told they needed to sell.
This conversation with the lender had the dairy farmer at the end of his rope.
He was a wreck. Mental state was really bad at that time. He was talking some really bad things and, he was not in a good state.
That dairyman made the right call. Helping dairies in dire straits stop the bleeding happens to be Pauly's specialty, and he knew what needed to be done to ease this dairy farmer's mind and to start to regain trust with the lender.
When we came in, we told him, we can handle this for you. We laid out a plan for him. We put it on paper, showed him exactly step by step what we were going to do and what needed to be changed. He agreed to some, not all the changes. We showed him, that we could actually get a win.
Pauly identified the 2 main areas to take immediate action: the management side, the day-to-day operations, workforce, and practices, and the financial side.
So they had debt not only with their current lender, but they had other debts, the FSA, some of the other financial institutes that you can get loans for your seed inputs and some equipment loans. They had a lot of different finances going on, and not only their bank. They never kept track of their finances. Get the bills in, they'd write checks out for them. If they had money to pay them, they would put them in the mail. Each month they would get bills from, let's say, the feed company. They would continuously write out checks, and then once they got money, they would put them in the mailbox. And sometimes some of the smaller ones, they would send out 2 checks, which they actually paid the bill twice. So there was just no control over what was going on day to day on the financial side. And then on the production side of things, their expenses were exceeding what their income was. We had to sit down with them and go through, look at what was going on day to day with all their expenses.
So where did Pauly put his focus first to gain traction quickly and save this dairy farm?
So we picked through every single expense, and we showed them areas where they could cut some costs, some things they could change on the labor side, on the feed side, on on everything they were doing. So labor side, the milking parlor is one of the areas we looked at. Again, we typically go there and see if there's any more room for milking the cows more times or getting more cows to milk, any way to get them more income. We saw that the employees were dragging it out so that they could get their 8 hours in. And in this case, some of them were 12 hours, the majority of them were. So it really should have only taken them 6 hours to milk cows, but they're dragging it out to be 8 hours. So we just ran a couple more pens through the parlor. So we got 3 more pens through the parlor 4 times, another time per day. And that increased their income a little bit more. It didn't really change on the labor side. They're still paying the same amount, but they got more out of their labor.
Teaming up with the dairy's nutritionist helped them shave off some expenses.
So we worked with the nutritionist there, and we were able to cut back on quite a bit of additives in the feed. So that cut their expenses. We increased the amount of forage they were feeding. They, in the past, had been real short on forage, so they were purchasing a lot of byproducts. So they had enough forage at the time, so we had them continuously increase the amount of forage they were feeding so we could back off on the purchased feeds. On the breeding side of things, they were using the best of the best, and at that current time, we said we can't do that. On that particular place, we started breeding everything to beef. They ended up selling their heifers to a buyer that they could buy them back. They had first right of refusal of the heifers. We do that on a case-by-case basis. If we find a good way to work things out, and in that particular case, they fell into a situation where they could get rid of their young stock, so they could eliminate all those expenses. They could breed everything to beef. As we know, the beef price is really high. Calves are bringing top dollar right now. I've never seen this before in my life. So that income coming back from the calves, yes, it took 9 months, but that income now is proving to basically help them pay for replacements.
While changes were made on the management side, Pauly also guided the dairy owner through understanding his finances and putting together a package that would help to regain some trust with the lender.
We worked on the financial side a little bit with him. He did have somebody helping him with his finances at the time, but they weren't able to put on paper what they were actually going to do on the management side and bring both pieces of the puzzle together. So we did some scenarios for him. We created a budget for him. First, we did the cash flow of where he was at, and then after that, we did a budget for where he would be if he continued to do everything the way he was doing it. And then we came up with another budget with our plans in place of how he's going to look financially if he makes all these changes. So we put that all on paper. We sat down with the lender. We went through that stuff with the lender. The lender looked at all of it and liked what he saw, and he's like, you guys need to make these changes. And we were, at the time, starting to make some of the changes. And then we put together, as time went on, we put together a progress report. So we were able to go back to the lender and show him, here's the changes, here's what's happened. In the beginning, we did it on a weekly basis, and then we extended it out every couple of weeks. We'd give that lender a progress report, once we got things headed in the right direction.
So to recap those 4 pieces of the financial package, it was 1, the current cash flow statement, 2, the current budget, 3, a projected budget that included the management changes, and a progress report to keep the lender looped in so that those suggested improvements were indeed being made in a timely manner. And that provided reassurance for the lender.
One of the deals we made with the lender is we will show you progress. We will show that we can turn this dairy around. So that put him at ease, and then ultimately put the owner at ease too. We assured him that we were going to work with him, and if there was no progress being made, we were going to have a sit down and have a hardcore meeting. The last thing I want to do is come in there and promise something and not get any results. So right away, we laid it on the line and said, all right, we either do this or your dairy is going to be gone and not the way you want it to be gone. I think with what we do, putting a complete package together, being able to go out on the management side, looking at what's going on day to day, and being able to go back and put these numbers on paper, just because we know what's going on day to day, helps us greatly. Being able to, like I said, have those goals on paper. And many times, when we do put numbers on paper, the lenders will question us. Okay, how are you going to get to this number on feed expense, or how are we going to get this much income on milk production? What are you going to do? So that's when we're able to explain what we're going to do on a management side.
This combination of a plan for management and financial changes on paper and with accountability and an action plan helps both the producer and the lender be confident to move forward. So how is this dairy farm and this dairy farmer doing today, 5 years later?
Last year, they actually made quite a bit of money. Milk price was higher, which helped a lot. This year, they were doing really well until the last couple of months where the milk price was down to $13. They struggled during those 2 months. But today, they have a decent relationship with their lender. Everybody's still a little skeptical yet that they're going to continue on, but if they continue down the path they're going right now, they'll be fine. We just did a 2024 budget for them, and it looks like they're going to make potentially $250,000 if we can keep a $18 milk price. They're going to make quite a bit of money. So operationally, they're doing really well. Once we dug into what they were doing, we were able to reduce some of the labor. They had a lot of extra people doing things that really didn't need to be done. So we cut some of the labor, but yeah, on the operation side, labor is not an issue for them at all anymore. And they used to have a lot of turnover. And I think part of the reason they were having a lot of turnover is the stress on ownership. The owner had so much stress on him because of the financial side of things. He was, I think, bouncing that back off of the employees. So now he's doing really well. Physically, he said he's able to sleep at night. He's actually eating again normally like he should be. During that time, he said he was hardly eating anything, hardly sleeping. Him and his wife were having major troubles at that point in time, and they're actually doing really well. So yeah, I think all around they're doing much better.
The call Pauly got from this dairyman, it's actually been a pretty familiar call that he's been getting a lot this year.
It's the beginning of spring, I think. We've been getting calls daily for the same situation. So we've been trying to put out fires at some of these places, and the downturn in milk here in June, July was really tough for a lot of these guys. But we've fielded a lot of calls this year, I guess, of lenders that have told their clients that they are not going to renew their notes. There's been a lot of them calls this year. Interest rates have gone up. So we've been trying to keep these lenders at bay and working with them, trying to get them all the information they need. And so far, we've been very successful at not having anybody get foreclosed on or any bankruptcies. We've been able to keep these people moving forward, making the changes that need to be made. We've been getting cash flows done, balance sheets, budgets, everything. We've been working on progress reports, just trying to keep everything moving. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Milk prices coming back up a little bit, but many of these need a lot of long-term management changes, and that's what we're working on right now.
Pauly offers this advice to dairy owners and managers listening today who want to be proactive in their financial future and with their lender relationship, so they don't have to be in a position where the bank is forcing them to sell out.
I think it's really important for everybody to understand their finances and understand where they're sitting, amongst their peers. And if you find yourself struggling this year, seek some help. There's people out there that can help get you budgets, cash flows, understand where you are financially. Don't continuously keep going back to your lender asking for money every time times get tough. Find out what you can do management-wise and see what you can do different so you don't have to always be asking for money. Yes, you might be paying down some debt all year long, and then you have 2 months of bad times, and then you got to go to the bank and get some money. Yeah, you can do that sort of thing, but see if you can plan ahead. Maybe you can financially do really well. Many of the farms we worked with last year actually had enough money to prepay on their feed. So if you're able to prepay, in many of those dairies now that we worked with that did do the prepay, during the downturn in milk here that we had this past summer, they were able to ride that out.
So in summary, Pauly looked at two pieces of the picture, the financial piece and the management piece. On the management side, there were 3 areas where he made changes the fastest. One was in the milking parlor to maximize labor and increase the amount of cows going through the parlor and the amount of milk income, as well as being able to reduce some of the expenses of the labor. Number 2 was the feeding area, being able to cut back on some ingredients by working with the nutritionist and also feeding more forages in the ration. And number 3 was the breeding program and replacement heifer program. By breeding everything to beef in this situation, they actually eliminated raising their own replacement heifers and were able to buy them back from a heifer raiser at freshening. And in the meantime, they were able to sell those black calves and use that income for buying back their own replacements. And again, it's that financial package that brings it all together with 4 key pieces. 1 is the current cash flow statement. 2 is the current budget. 3 is a budget with projected changes from the suggested management plan. And number 4, the progress report to take to the lender to show that the actions that are suggested to be able to achieve those income and expense reduction goals are indeed being met.
Understanding your finances, that's something we can do. But the big key for us is we do it along with the management side of things. Yeah, that's where we can actually show how we're going to basically save your dairy.
And so thank you, Pauly Paul from Complete Management Consulting, for joining us on the Up-Level Dairy Podcast. And if you want to reach out to Pauly, you can find his contact information in our show notes. And as always, friends, thank you for listening to the Up-Level Dairy Podcast. And you can head over to upleveldairy.com to subscribe to the Up-Level Dairy community. And every time we have a new episode, you'll be able to see that in your inbox. Thanks, friends.